Hey friends, over the next few months, I will be interviewing unique people who have great ideas on how to make radical changes in America's eating habits, boost awareness of our environment, and contribute to the economic health of our country. This is Meryl Kennedy, and this is my podcast. Welcome, Alexandra. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you, Meryl. So nice to meet you.
Such a pleasure to meet you as well. So I want to start by saying really appreciate you being on our new podcast that we're starting, Rice Up Your Bowl. Super excited about having you as our first guest here today. So Alexandra, with all the craziness that happened in 2020, it really left me thinking, maybe we can do things a little bit different and really get behind something with meaningful impact, right? And so my friend Ricardo and I were talking about people in this space that are doing things like phenomenal things to encourage people, bring motivation, help people learn how to eat better, help people learn how to exercise, and then also just, make their lives a little bit better each day. So wanted to start with you because I know that you're in this motivational speaker space and first of all, happy, International Women's Day, right? So perfect.
Yes, happy International Day to you too.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. So I just, as a female, I wanted to start out and ask you, what motivated you to start that business and, what encouraged you to start as a lifestyle coach?
Well, first of all, I actually my degree is a mechanical engineer,
No
and
way. Okay.
yes, and I work in marketing. I had a master's in marketing, and that's what I did before I moved to US 10 years ago. When we moved here with my ex-husband, I became a full-time mom. I have Irish twins. They're called Irish twins because they're born the same year.
Yep.
They're not
Less than
twins.
12 months.
Yes, correct. So um, the thing is that I become a mom. I start experiencing new emotions and new challenges as a woman, even bigger than a degree as a mechanical engineer and in marketing. And I felt like emotionally I was not ready to face all this. So I looked for another ways to face. I was like hire a coach and a therapist that let me help go through my postpartum depression. And so I went to the doctor's way and I was medicated and it helped me, yes, but definitely it was not the way that I felt like my body wanted to heal itself or go through this. So I decided to drop everything that I was taking at the time and look for the answers within myself and looking the answers in a holistic way. That I do believe that we are beings, energetic beings, we are souls in a human body. That's basically what I studied in spiritual psychology. And so we have mind, body, and soul. And
Oh, Alexandra, I love that. So
I
much truth to
wanted,
that.
yes, and I find the truth in that. I was very actually in a good shape after my two kids because I was an athlete when I was younger. So it was easy for me to recover, but it was not in a good place mentally and energetically. I was not. So the first thing you say, like there is something wrong with me, and I went to the radical way of taking medication and going to psychologist. And then I found that there was nothing wrong with me, that the only way to go and overcome your emotions is going through them, feel them.
Yeah.
And once you feel them and embrace them and know that this is normal, that happened, you can go to the radical acceptance of, I'm going to let them go. And it doesn't matter if they were going to come back. I have the tools within myself to
To face them.
center.
To face them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Alexandra,
So,
everything you're saying resonates so much to me. And I think it's important for us to talk about this today, especially because I have so many friends, myself included, your body goes through unbelievable changes during childbirth. And it does change the physics of your mental health, your physical health. It's not just your body, it's mind, body, soul experience.
Yes.
And it's a very long process to develop a child internally, and then you have to recover from that. I always tell my friends that it takes 10 months approximately. Everybody says 9, but it's really 10 to have a baby. And it takes that or longer to recover from one. So having Siamese twins like that, it's a big emotional toll on your body. And I
Yes.
love what you're saying about the
Spiritual.
spirituality, exactly, part of that, because that's really a big factor. And I know that many of my friends, colleagues, girlfriends, they do seek medication and help from experts and things like that. It never really goes away until, I mean, I literally just had this conversation. You have to face, yourself and really be able to move through that. So I thought that was beautiful what you said.
Yes. And I mean, after I faced all this, I opened this account. It was like, well, I was in marketing and social media 10 years ago. It wasn't, or Instagram wasn't what it is right now. So I opened my Instagram account that it was called The Perfect Mom Diary,
Okay.
because that was what people thought about me, that I was this perfect mom, this perfect wife with the perfect house and the perfect life, and nothing far from the truth. But it is what sometimes social media bombarded us with that message. Like, you have a
Yes.
baby and you recover in 5 seconds and you look like a supermodel.
Mhm.
And then you do these huge parties, the house warm party, the baptism, like you do all this,
You're perfect.
making them feel that I was perfect. And that's completely wrong, because if we open up much more, we will support each other much more. So that's what I did. I start journaling in public in my Instagram. So I love photography. So I took photography of all the journey of my pregnancies and when the kids were growing up, and I was writing about it. How awful sometimes it feels, how not perfect, or how perfectly imperfect life can be, as well as an inspiration, and everything that I was hidden in myself and in my family. Like, I had a miscarriage before my son. Two
Mm.
months after I was pregnant with my son was born preemie. He had in week 33, I had a kidney infection.
Oh, wow,
I was
Alexandra.
prepared to be a natural delivery. I was prepared to breastfeed perfectly, as they teach
We
you
all
that
are,
is so
right?
easy. Oh my God, the most awful experience of all I had. And then 2 months later, I was pregnant again with my daughter. So basically, I was pregnant for 2 years or longer, and my hormones were up and down. And you think that's the right and the normal way. Now that I see back on my journey, it was perfect the way it is, because I have learned and grown so much.
Right.
But I never had this voice that supported me and saying, like, everything's gonna be fine.
This is
This
how
is the
it's
way that
supposed to
you
be. That's right.
Yes, this is the way that you decided to be, because that's another thing that flag that I live by. We are not victims.
Right.
We choose our path. We co-create with the universe, and definitely we are not the things that happen to us, but what we learn that happened for us. So I learned a lot what all this journey took me, until the point I decided to get divorced, because I was really in an unhappy marriage. Uh, that being said, I come from a family very conservative, very religious. My parents have been married for 45 years, my sister for 15, and she's younger than me. So I went against everything I was
But sometimes you have to make
programmed.
yourself happy. You can't make other people happy if you're not happy. So
Correct. And not only that, I had the responsibility with my kids as well.
that's
Like,
right.
if I am good with myself, I'm gonna be a better mom for
Absolutely.
them, and I'm
Absolutely.
teaching them something about life that is I was trying to break also a family, let's say a karma or programming that it's not that I don't believe that it's something is right or wrong. It wasn't right for me
That's
to
right.
stay in the marriage, that I was unhappy. And with younger kids, my kids were 1 year and a half and 2 years and a half when I took the decision. And then I entered into this.
Nobody talks about how hard it is on a marriage having children. I mean, nobody talks
Yes.
about that. It's
Um,
supposed to all be
my
rainbows and unicorns, and it's a beautiful baby, and it's extremely difficult.
Yes, my OB when I had my second,
Mhm.
and I was just like overwhelmed and crying in his in his office, and that I wanted to use an something to prevent that I had a third so close. He told me, nobody tells you this, but a kid is a family crisis because you're used to
True.
a dynamic,
It's
and
true.
it takes you out of this dynamic. I used to refer when I was married and without kids, like as a single. I was single. Oh no, not single, but no kids.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's just like
It's true
you
though.
can get divorced with your husband, but not to the father of your children and not to your children's ever. That's the real, like,
That's
forever and
life.
ever.
That's life.
Yes. And so it comes to disrupt your whole dynamic and your whole being. And but it's up to you. How do you use that in your favor? Like you're learning, you're growing, you're evolving, and no one in this world can teach you more than a child while they're growing up. You're growing up with them. So yeah, I got divorced. And in the middle of my dreadful, because also my ex-husband didn't want to get divorced. We were this family that he was expecting us to be. My parents didn't want me to get divorced. Then my youngest sister passed away.
Oh, wow,
Um,
Alexandra.
she committed suicide. She was living in Chile. I was living in Miami. My parents were living in Venezuela. My brother was living in Vancouver. And my other sister was living in Panama. And we received the call that she jumped out of her building.
Mm.
So it was,
So how did you, with all this, I mean, a divorce and a death in the family, I mean, a divorce is even, it's, almost like a death. I mean, how did you deal with the grief of that? Because grief is something that people don't talk about often, especially in divorce. And then to lose your sister at the same time, that had to be
yes,
extremely difficult.
honestly, I got, my blog is called The Perfect Mom also because I understood, and that's what I have learned all these years, is about being aware of my reactions,
Right.
like reactions and the reactment of childhood trauma. So something that was really ingrained in me when I was when I was growing up, when I was in
Mm-hmm.
my family, was like you needed to be perfect to be loved. In order to be perfect, you needed to exceed at school, to be the best at sports, to be the perfect wife, the perfect
Right.
mom, the perfect everything. Then I realized that it was unnecessary, that you are perfect the way you are and you don't need to be perfect to be loved. But I activate my perfectionist mechanism, and it's like, okay, let me assess. Let me put this on hold with the marriage. I need
Right.
to take care of my parents that are my priority right
Right.
now, and putting in a balance, like what was happening. Honestly, the worst thing that can happen to a human being is to losing a child. So yes, my marriage was grieving of all the dreams that I have, of this um
Perfect life.
emotions that I felt for my husband, that I still was, I was still loving him, but we were not happy and I needed to take the decision. So I did. um but that was not the worst thing that can happen to a human being. It was that. And part of me also felt, because it was my younger sister and she looked up to me, like months of her life, it was just like I'm grieving also a child, not only a sister.
Right.
um but I needed to take care of my parents because they were my priorities. So basically that's what I did. I put kind of my life as a person on hold for several months, where there were like kind of in their feet.
Mm-hmm.
That happened between 6 months
Mm-hmm.
because the mom and my dad were really in a bad shape. So I moved them with me for this month, and I was separated, so I had the space, and my kids were a big joy for them. So when they finally left to their country and their their house.
And back to,
I
do they live in
just
Chile as well?
my sister lived in Chile, but my parents were living in Venezuela.
Okay.
She was like studying and working in Chile. So basically, that was when I said, like, I need time for myself. I need to
Absolutely.
regroup. And I had the blessing to meet a guru from India, and I had a session, a friend recommending him, and I let it all out in that session. Like, it was like I opened the Pandora box, and I let out all those feelings that I didn't know that I had, that I felt guilty for the death of my sister because I couldn't help her enough, because I couldn't help my parents either, because actually the day my sister died, part of my parents died with her.
Oh, I'm
So
sure.
I'm not losing also like a sibling, but also my parents in a
Yes,
way, and the sense of family that we used to have.
that's right.
So what I do with all this. So basically I went from, let's feel it all out, like feel everything that is there, grief, cry, let it out the anger. I did everything, almost everything that is out there. I think the only thing that I have not done is like these ayahuasca rapid things that are out there, but cacao ceremony, tea ceremony, Vedic readings from astrology, numerology. I did everything that is out there looking for answers. I went to Bali to a retreat for 2 weeks. I went to India. Like, I was relentlessly looking for answers and to feel better. And then I just realized that everything was just
Yeah.
here in my space, in my body, and just integrating everything that I have learned at that point. Because also the perfectionist in me didn't want to experience what it was like, a tea ceremony, cacao ceremony, or a retreat. Like, I
Yeah.
did all the certifications. I did the spiritual psychology is University of Santa Monica. I did life coach and wellness, numerology, Reiki master
It's
degree.
amazing, but I really rarely share this story, but since you've been so open with me, I feel like I need to. But I have it's very different, but one of my sisters, actually, her son passed away. And so I understand what it's like to lose someone, and dealing with death from your parents' standpoint, right? Because, and then also my sister having to deal with death, and that grief that comes with losing a child is like nothing that can be explained. So I'm totally with you. I think I did about every possible remedy that you could do. And I also found a lot of peace, and happiness in yoga, and bringing it back to self, and trying to find some type of holistic health. And in all honesty, it took years, really, to really be, I feel like, myself again. But it's a journey that I feel like people need to feel. Sometimes we, as Americans especially, we kind of numb ourselves and don't want to feel anything. But grief is because you loved, right? And everybody likes to feel loved. So I think that to feel grief is almost the opposite of that. It's just a human experience that can't be explained, and really, to anyone, unless they've had that kind of pain. And um, so I love that you're sharing that with me. I really appreciate that, because that's a very deep thing to share pain, and to really come out of that. And then now to share your experience, to be a motivation to other people, just like you were just now to me, to actually come out and say, I had an experience like that as well. Um, that's phenomenal. That's
Thank you.
very
And
motivational.
thank you for sharing that too. Thank
So
you.
yeah, no, thank you.
So basically, what I did after all this certification and this started, that I did it basically for myself.
Hmm.
I come to realize that I needed to speak up. I think that there is a story that we don't tell when we are going through deep, let's call it negative, but I don't like to use also negative or positive, but the emotions that
Yeah.
are you're vibrating low, that can be either for a circumstance or an event that happened in your life, temporary, or it can be an imbalance that you have that I think is really tied. And I have to talk about this with you, with how we nourish our body, how we nourish with what we see and when we listen, what we read in books, what we read in social media, what we see with our eyes, the things we put in our body that has chemicals, and how we nourish our body with our food. I think food, it's for me, my concept, my opinion, what I have studied, it's like fuel and healing. And I think us as a family, uh, obviously no judgment intended, I do understand that this was in the path of my sister, that it
Right.
was part of her spiritual curriculum and ours. And but she struggled a lot with depression since she was a teenager, and something shifted in her, and her diet as well shifted. And me looking for answers a little bit, also because I want to look for answers for my parents so they feel better,
Mhm.
that it was not something that they didn't do or from
Right.
their guilt.
That's right. It's not
Um,
their journey, it was hers.
yes, correct. But impacted us. So how we take something so painful and transform into something positive. So looking for the answers for us, for our own healing, for what we now are going to do with my kids and grandkids, but also what I can do now for the sisters of others, or
Absolutely.
on other moms that are going through the same journey that my sister went, or mine.
Well,
So like,
I'll tell you from my experience, that one in particular, I was very ill for several years, like had very, very intense gastro problems. And I was similar as you. I mean, I was healthy, normal weight, those kind of things. But all of a sudden, everything that I ate, my body rejected. I think, when you're going through something really that deep and that painful, your whole body goes through it, not just your mind. It really affects everything. Your gut is a big piece of that. And that is something that it's interesting that you're saying that, and that food really is a focus here, because um I totally had to eliminate certain things out of my diet in order to be able to heal myself. I actually got colitis at one point, and really it was through kind of a back to some the basics and limiting myself from certain gluten foods, and doing different diets, that I was able to really bring myself back to life. So I do think that food is an important part, that people take for granted. What you put into your body, both spiritually, to your point, right? What you look at, what you watch on Instagram, those kind of things, but also from a physical standpoint, when you're going through something like that, you can tell your body just can't heal itself the same way it can in a normal situation.
yes, correct. And I decided as well, because when I did my yoga teacher training, and meditation and pranayama, that it was better the connection if you are clean from certain foods. So I
Right.
did. And I basically become 6 years ago mainly plant based.
Okay.
As I told you, I was a high performance athlete and still are.
Hmm.
Still at 42, I do
You
competitions,
look
Spartan races.
phenomenal. You look phenomenal.
Thank you. Still 42, I do Spartan races, triathlons, half marathon. I do
Okay.
all that, and I saw that actually my performance was much better with a plant based diet.
Okay.
Um, and spiritual, I feel even better. Like
Right.
it was taking some certain food that I used to say, like, oh, maybe I eat too much, or
Hmm.
maybe
Just
this.
made you feel kind of heavy.
Yes, correct. And actually, I started more about the food, and definitely I took out. Now I don't say that I'm plant based. I had a couple of accidents, especially in my shoulder. I had a double fracture a year ago, so I needed to compromise something in order to get more efficiently collagen. So I'm having fish, organic fish, once a week, but it's still mainly plant based. But that journey took me to, I don't believe in one diet that one fits all. I
Right.
do believe that because we are particular, unique, and special, um, people with these diets, paleo, keto, vegan, not necessarily because they look healthy for some people and it works for some people, it will be for everybody.
Right.
So, and I do believe in smart and intuitive eating, like whatever works for you and is great for your system, and you digest in a good way, and makes you gets you to the point that you feel emotionally and spiritually in a better way. So
So
that's
true.
the best for you. If that it's meat, um,
And sometimes you have to
so be it.
experiment with those things, right? So,
Yes.
in the rice industry, like we are, I mean, rice is something that kind of has a bad reputation to it, maybe because it's a carbohydrate, right? But um, it really is kind of a perfect grain in some ways, being gluten free, and it actually has low glycemic index. I mean, there's some big factors to it that make it really kind of a perfect grain for athletes. But when I ask my friends, why, and just even look at some of my different associates. And it's just extremely difficult for people to eat healthy or find ways to eat healthy. Why do you think that that is? You think that's just our culture or, um,
Well, it's part of a culture, definitely, especially here in US.
mhm,
I was until I was 30, I was living in Venezuela where everything is organic and
right.
grass fed. So definitely I saw a change here, especially with the fast food. We don't have much places to go for fast food. I was raised with a mom that was a full-time mom. She cooked most of the
Everything.
meals
Right.
for us. Our experience of meal was cooking as a family, inviting all of, like, cousins and aunts. That was the experience, and it was, let's say, the same price of eating that way that going out for eating. Like, it's not as expensive as it's here. But you can find many excuses why people do not eat healthy. But nowadays, there is so much information out there everywhere. And we are definitely a culture that is much more aware than our grandparents and our parents. I just think it's a lack of commitment and discipline. And that is very tied with self love. And we think that self love is indulgent with things that are not as good, let's say,
Chocolate. I mean, I think,
chocolate,
yeah, I mean,
alcohol.
that's right.
Yes,
That's right.
yes. So I think it's a lack of commitment because there's going to be always something out there that will be tempting to get you out of your alignment, as I call it, or alignment with yourself. If you
Right.
are committed, it doesn't matter if you're on vacation, if you're going to a breakup, if you're grieving, you're gonna find an excuse to eat in a bad way.
Yeah, no
But
more
it
fad diets, right? I mean, it's a lifestyle. It's not,
100%.
just something that you do January 1st every year. So I'm kind of in love with this whole concept of the family table. And I loved how you talked about your mom in the kitchen, and the whole concept that my sisters had when we started Four Sisters Rice was really to bring people back to the family table. And so to me, that's kind of where you can start eating healthy too, right?
Yes.
It's our responsibility to make sure that our kids eat healthy and that we're feeding them good, nutritious food. But it's also not so difficult as people think. It's actually probably less time consuming than going to eat out every meal.
Oh,
So I think that if we can just learn how to cook simple, home cooked meals without a lot of fuss to it, that really we could bring back kind of this concept of the family table and bringing our families together and then nourishing our body and soul. So I love the fact that you talked about how food can actually nourish your soul and your inner being too. I think that there's nothing more true than that, and really is a focus on why I wanted to do this podcast and why I wanted to talk about how important food is to your being, right? To your soul. So,
yes.
I
And
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I read recently that millennials, the generation for them, they consider themselves like more than 60%. They consider themselves foodie, and
Mhm.
they tied indulgence to going out and having an experience and having an opinion about restaurants and food. Uh, I never had that when we were growing up in my country, in my with my parents. It was about the experience with the family and the
Right,
family recipes.
right.
So one thing that I think really bring back to me and many people I know, it was like 2020 that everything was closed. There was no restaurants and you have no options at being
Yeah,
here.
maybe that was one of the pauses of the pandemic, right?
For me, honestly, and many people that I know, it was just like you reconnected with the experience of cooking. And
Mhm.
honestly, for me, when sometimes I'm stressed out, I bake,
Yeah,
I cook. I that's my way of connection, which actually was back in the days where women were not allowed to be gurus and having this spiritual experience to go into the mountain for 21 days and get connected with the universe. They needed to stay at home with the kid.
right.
That was one of the main ways they got connected to
It's through
spirituality
food.
through cooking,
Yeah.
through their energy, their love, unconditional love. And I'm sure that you know that moms in general, they communicate love through food.
That's
Like they
right.
want their
That's
kids
right.
to
They
eat
want to be the
healthy,
best, right?
to yes, to have the best. Like as I told you, I'm plant-based mainly, but my kids had two houses. Their
Yeah.
dads are mine, and I cannot control what they eat in the
Well,
other
I
house.
mean, you can't control their life either, right? So,
Exactly,
um,
but I present to them plant-based food, but
that's right.
when they want to eat meat or fish or chicken, I give them the best that is out there.
Right.
I don't I because that's my way of communicating love.
I think that the main
So
thing is just educating your children for what's healthy and what's not, right? They have to make their own decisions eventually, anyways, but it has to start at the home because if you don't have that understanding of what nutrition is, then you'll never have that as part of your lifestyle. I actually had a friend that taught me how to meditate, and it was chopping peppers in your house, right? Just the idea of cooking really is a form of meditation and can be
yes.
extremely valuable to just eh, being able to recharge yourself.
Yes, and taking what you're comment about the rice, yes, as an athlete, for me, rice is very important because it's gluten free, and I get my I don't have any problem with carbs,
Yeah, you
especially
need
because I
carbs.
work out. Yes, I do
You
need
need to
carbs.
be able to get up the next morning and do it again.
Yes, correct. But in general, not even for athletes, I give to my children rice. Um, Rice specifically has a protein that other cereals have that you cannot process as well. So for my kids, it's really healthy to eat. And also, I prepare rice and leave it in the fridge so we can eat it later. And you can prepare different type of food, like I do tacos, and they want it with rice, then I don't know, the meat with rice, and then I do bowls with salads, and I put the rice. Like it's so versatile for everything that you want to prepare, and it's healthy. For
Yeah,
example, also
we have a slogan in the industry that says start with rice. And a lot of it is right. It's just because of that, right? Literally, you can start any meal and you can eat any cuisine from across the world using rice.
yeah,
So it is a very versatile food and it's also nutritious and really like kids need energy, right? We don't need to limit
yeah,
our kids from having healthy energy and rice is a perfect form of that healthy energy.
yes.
Well, look, I want to end with a question for, especially because it's International Women's Day and it's Women's History Month about, a message to you to other young females, or message from you to other young females today. And do you have something specifically that you'd like to tell the audience?
Oh, definitely. I consider myself an old soul, but I'm in a young body, because I took care of myself first. Like, I am very much connected with my inner child. And I think that's something really important that we all have to do in order to keep being creative, keep being in that curious mindset, and also in a mindset of everything's possible. Like if we see kids, the way they approach the world through their eyes, I think that's the main answer for every question, and that's the main role model for all as an adult. So I am very blessed to have two kids, but you just have to look around. If you're an aunt, if you're a friend with other moms that have kids, like, be connected with your inner child. That's very, very important. Don't tell yourself, like, I do believe that words matter. Uh, Neurolinguistic programming, like what the stories that we tell ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves, um, it can build you up or they can destroy you. So being kind and compassionate with yourself, like you be with your best friend, like you were motivating your kids to do stuff.
Love that.
I think that's really, really important. And the other, for me, it's like always to look back of the way that uh, you have walked, the path that you have walked. We usually tend to be very hard with ourselves of what I want to be in the future. And it gives us anxiety because we want to be there faster and in a better way. And honestly, if we look back from where we began and everything that we have accomplished and overcome, we're more like, okay, I've done it. I'm in the right place. I'm in the right time with the right people. And this is my journey. And it has to be an experience of enjoying all the way. Like happiness is not an island.
Right?
Happiness, it is a journey. It's living in the now, the present moment, being grateful for what you have, what you have accomplished, and yes, hopefully a better future. But the future is not written. You could create. You don't know what is going to happen. So those will be my three main messages for the women and the humankind in general.
It's all about self-love and respecting yourself. Well, that is a beautiful message, and you're a beautiful person. I feel very blessed to be able to interview you today, especially on International Women's History Day. And thank you so much, and Alexandra, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Meryl.
Mwah.
Mwah.